Very good afternoon to colleagues, friends, and partners. I wish to welcome you all to this webinar on intergenerational action on climate change, unleashing the power of older people. It is co-organized by HelpAge International, the Asian Development Bank, and the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. My name is Kaveh Zahidi. I am the Deputy Executive Secretary of UNSCAP. I very much look forward to moderating this seminar and the discussions between you and our distinguished panelists today. Today we'll get a better understanding of the connection between climate change and population aging, and have the opportunity to share ideas and experiences on what role older persons can play in climate action. To help us with this, we have a great lineup of distinguished speakers, as well as a number of videos produced by our partners. The session will kick off with a video message by Ms. Patricia Espinosa, who is the Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, and as well as a recorded presentation by Carl Andrew Pillemer, who is the Professor of Human Development, Cornell University, on older people and intergenerational action on climate change. And in between those, we will hear the voices of older persons from the Philippines. After this, there will be 2 rounds for panel discussions. And in between the 2 rounds, we'll screen some more videos that represent yet more voices of older people, older persons, and examples of older persons involved in climate action. You, as our audience, can engage by asking questions through the chat box. The chat box is going to be monitored at all times, and we'll pick up the questions and bring them into the 2nd round of discussions with our panelists. Should we run out of time and not manage to reply to some of your questions in the chat box, be sure that we will pick them up and respond to you after the session. Allow me now to start our conversation, and to start it with a quote from the UN Secretary General from earlier this year, when he said, and I quote, "The COVID-19 pandemic has reminded us that we cannot afford to ignore known risks. Climate disruption is a risk we are well aware of. The science has never been clearer. We are facing a climate emergency." End quote. Climate change, of course, affects the livelihoods of so many people, especially here in Asia and the Pacific. Our region is highly vulnerable to climate-induced disasters and extreme weather events. The annual loss due to climate-induced disasters in our region amounts to some $675 billion a year, according to ESCAP estimates. In at least 12 countries of the region, more than half the population actually lives in areas of high risk to disasters. As is so often the case, persons in vulnerable situations, such as women, persons with disabilities, and of course, older persons, are at particular risk of being severely affected by climate change, because they have lower savings and income security, they are more likely to suffer from pre-existing health conditions, or their voices are more muted and not heard. Most of the fatalities in natural disasters, including those caused by climate, such as heat waves, are older persons and persons with disabilities. Older persons, particularly in rural areas, often don't have the financial means to cope with climate disasters. And given their health situation, they are at times more fragile and less resilient. While it is well documented that older persons are often the most affected by climate change, what we still need to explore is how that growing population can be involved in fighting climate change and being part of the solution to climate change. The role of older persons is vitally important, given that Asia and the Pacific is aging rapidly. 2020, 14% of the population in the region was 60 years old or over. By 2050, 1 in 5 of the population of the region will be 60 years or over, and the majority of those will be women. So that's why we're here today. We will learn firsthand what older persons are already doing to combat climate change, and we will discuss how they can further contribute to climate action. To start our conversation, it is my pleasure to introduce a keynote video message by Patricia Espinosa, the Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. She's going to help us to set the scene with reflections on where are we with regards to climate crisis and needed intergenerational global action. Let's watch.
Hello, greetings from Bonn. Thank you for inviting me to take part in this important and timely session. I congratulate the organizers, especially Help Age International and the Asian Development Bank for their initiative. It is encouraging to see how, despite COVID-19, institutions around the world have not lost sight of the other great crisis of our time, climate change. The scientific evidence is clear. The average temperature of the Earth's surface has been rising and continue to do so on land and in the oceans. Climate change, including greater frequency and intensity of extreme temperatures and weather events, is already affecting food security. It's also contributing to desertification and land degradation in many regions. This, along with natural disasters, rising sea levels or more, has a human toll as well. Science-based show us the reality of our situation, but morality must motivate us to act. 5 years ago, the international community adopted the Paris Agreement, a covenant of hope for the world. This provided countries with a comprehensive plan to address climate change. A growing number of countries, regions, and cities, as well as private companies and businesses, are now committed to carbon neutrality targets. This is encouraging, but we need to do much more to turn that ambitious set of global goals into national policies, concrete actions, and actual results. Governments, however, cannot do this on their own. Solutions can only come from all sectors of society, and that includes older people. We are all re-energized when we see youth throughout the world take up the call of climate change through action in the streets, the media, and more. But the voice of older people is equally important, bringing decades of wisdom, intelligence, and skills. This influence is not only well earned, it's growing and will continue to do so over the coming years as its share of the global population increases. Today, there are over 1 billion people over the age of 60 in the world, myself proudly among them. By 2050, when we need to have achieved carbon neutrality, they will be 2 billion, roughly 1/5 of the global population. Asia, in particular, has the largest and fastest growing segment of older people. Here, as in other regions, they constitute a formidable, largely untapped resource. Older people can use their moral authority to call for and support commitment to ambitious climate action at every level of government. Older people can provide inspiration and guidance in all areas of life: families, social organizations, and local communities. Older people can lead by example, using their voices, their votes, and even the value of their hard-earned pensions to foster climate action. So let me end with this. The question is not so much whether the world needs older people to take an active role in the fight against climate change, but whether they are aware of the crucial part that they must play to ensure the well-being of their communities now and in the future. I trust that initiatives such as the one that has brought us together today will help to achieve this crucial and urgent task. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Espinosa, who is leading the preparations for the COP26. The focus will really be on raising ambition. And as she says, it's not whether, but how the older populations can become involved in the climate movement. Let's follow that global perspective with a very local perspective. I'm going to share with you another video, this time presenting climate change from the perspective of older persons in the Philippines.
Napakaganda ang buhay nung bata pa ako doon sa Paco, Maynila. Kasi ilang lakad mo lang, mga 150 metro lamang mula sa bahay namin, ay bukid na, may bukid na. At doon kami naglalaro. Naging playground ko bukid. Sa pusod ng Maynila, may bukid. Ang gilid ng Pedro Hill noon ay punong-puno ng puno. Puno ng kamatsile. Doon nga kami naglalaro ng holin sa gilid ng Pedro Hill, sa ilalim ng mga puno ng kamatsile. At sa gabi, alam mo, nakikita ko may mga alitap-tap. Nawala na lahat yan. Nawala na lahat yan sa takbo ng panahon. Sa dami ng tao, dumami ang mga bahay, mga bukirin, naging semento na. At ang kapalit ay pagbaha, pagdumi ng ilog, at nawala ang mga bukid. Dumami ang tao. Dikit-dikit na kami. Binabaha na kami. Kaya noong 1971, umalis kami ng Maynila. Lumipat kami rito sa San Mateo. Ngunit, yon, pareho ang kinahinatnan ng kapaligiran. Nung pinanggalingan ko sa Paco, ay hindi nagtagal, ganun din nangyari dito sa kapaligiran dito sa aming barangay Banaba, sa Mateo Rizal. Ang ilog ay unti-unti nang dumudumi. Napakarami ng mga bundok ang napatag sa Montalban at sa San Mateo. Nagkaroon ng problema. Nakita ko sa lugar. Naobserbahan ko lugar. Galing akong Maynila. Naobserbahan ko lugar. Kinakailangan ugatin ang problema ng climate change. Kinakailangan may karampatang kilos ang mga tao. Lahat ng tao ay meron din kakayahan makatulong sa pagsagka ng climate change. Hindi lang unawa Isang level yung unawa. Pero mas malalim pa ay yung kilos. Pagkatanim. Tulad ng ginagawa namin dito sa Puglutao, sa mga pamayanan, huwag magsunog ng basura. So, nagpatas ng kamalayan, sumunod, nag-organisa, sumibol nga ang Buklutao, sumibol ang aming community-based disaster risk reduction management, sumibol na ang aming pagpapataas ng kapasidad ng komunidad, hanggang sa nagkaroon kami ng ganitong evacuation center, nagkaroon kami ng mga proyekto sa pagtatanim, sa livelihood program, at sa paggawa ng bangka para bigyan ng bangka ang mga vulnerable komunidad. Pero ako isang tao lamang, isang simpleng mamamayan. Tumatanda na. Pero sinasabi ko ngayon dito, dinanas ko ang magandang kapaligiran. Ito na nga, ang climate change. Nandito na tayo. Gawin natin ang bawat makakaya natin gawin. Pwede pa.
Thank you very much. What a powerful video that was. The voice from the Philippines. It's now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Again, a video message by Carl Pillemer, the Professor of Human Development and Gerontology at Cornell University in the US. He's going to present a think piece we developed specifically for our session on older people and intergenerational action on climate change. Please on the video.
It's a tremendous pleasure to be here with you, and I wish I could be there in person. I especially wish that because as I look out my window, I can see 2 feet of snow here in upstate New York, and I imagine that many of you are in much warmer and more pleasant places. I hope that we can meet in person. I've had a tremendous experience working with Help Age and getting to know people in the organization. and I'm looking forward to further collaboration on this and maybe other topics. So I'd like to talk to you briefly about this topic of older people and climate change action, why I believe they are both a powerful but highly underutilized resource. And I have prepared a background paper, which I know all of you have, that has more information than I can give you here. I'll just highlight a few key points. Often in our world, you're only allowed to deal with one issue at a time. And we have a remarkable opportunity to link these two issues, mounting environmental problems and the growing older population. Now, these two separate issues are often seen as crises, but both together provide a remarkable opportunity where we can, in a way, solve two problems at once, develop new and meaningful roles for older people, and help to mitigate and prevent the effects of climate change. So when people think of the older population and environmental sustainability, they often focus on the first point. Older people as victims, as highly vulnerable to environmental hazards and problems, and to the effects of climate change. I want to highlight, though, this second point, the issue that older people are powerful and potentially empowered resources for positive action around climate change, and we just have to tap that resource. Now, I don't want to undervalue or to weaken the impression that older people are highly vulnerable to environmental threats, as many of you know. Certainly there's global climate change, but also other environmental issues to which older people are particularly vulnerable, like air and water pollution and the effects of toxic chemicals. But when it comes to climate change, though, older people are going to be in danger. And one fact that some people aren't aware of is that more older people die each year from extreme heat events than from all other natural disasters that affect older people combined. So as heat grows through global warming, older people are going to be increasingly at risk. But I think we have to move beyond just the vulnerability of older people and towards seeing them as active problem solvers, as part of the solution to climate change and to other environmental problems. And one reason I believe this so strongly is the remarkable fit between older people, where they stand on the life course, their experiences and wisdom, and climate change action. So moving older people from passive victims to active participants showcases their strengths. Their population growth is enormous, and if they work together, their collective impact in countries like mine, but all over the world, this population growth means that the collective impact of older people is huge. In some countries, in some regions of countries, there's a formal retirement period, so those are individuals with more time for engagement. Even elsewhere, though, older people may be out of the active labor force and freed up of some family responsibilities and can perhaps get more involved in climate change action. We also can maximize the potential of the developmental stage of older people. From psychological research all around the world, we know that older people everywhere have a desire to express generativity. That is to help build a better world that they themselves may not live to see. And that fits perfectly with climate change action. We also know from research we and others have conducted that engaging in environmental activities as volunteers, as activists, engaged in any way leads to physical health benefits and psychological benefits. It leads to social integration through meaningful roles, and it allows older people to build their self-esteem by modeling resilience. Their wisdom, their experience of problems and difficulties is extraordinarily useful, and they can serve as models to younger people and help build their own sense of self-worth as a result. There are also huge benefits to communities. Older people acting in organized ways all over the world improve local environments through anything from helping to preserve outdoor spaces to monitoring marine environments to a whole host of other activities. Older people in their own communities also can model better daily habits and practices, especially in locations where they are honored and revered as wise elders. What they do influences other people, and organized groups of older people can help change corporate and government policy in more environmentally friendly directions. However, there are some barriers. Research from many countries shows that older people are somewhat less likely to express pro-environmental attitudes than younger people, and somewhat less likely to be active in environmental organizations. So there's lots of potential there to move people in this direction in later life. Also, environmental organizations haven't been ready for older volunteers. They have not really adapted activities for older people according to their life course stage. And many environmental organizations have not targeted older people in their recruitment. I'd like to now shift our focus to how we can promote older people's climate change action. One thing we've learned from our research and other studies have shown, many older people would like to have more knowledge, more training, and more education about environmental and climate change issues in order to be more effective activists. So we can create those programs. As noted, activities need to be adapted for different levels of ability as people age. A fantastic idea is to maximize the engagement of older people's associations. And I know that HelpAge has been tremendously involved in creating and promoting such associations. Their members can be involved in environmental action, but a very positive step is to link their activities with environmental organizations. And we also need to find alternatives to the internet in some cases. A lot of citizen science and other environmental programs rely on the internet. And in low resource countries and among low resource audiences in my own country, people sometimes don't have access to the internet. So finally, as I leave you with a few questions to consider, but we need to understand best program models and best practices to get older people involved in climate change action. We also need to understand how these programs can be adapted across countries and cultures, and especially how can we engage people in marginalized and low-income populations. I'd like to close with some wisdom from one of our own indigenous populations in the United States, our Native Americans. I live in central New York, which was home of the Native American Iroquois Nation, a very large Indian nation before settlement occurred by outsiders. And they had a proverb that in every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. So that this kind of a 7th generation principle comes naturally to older people. It's part of elder wisdom. And we can build on that kind of strength to really have older people be engaged and empowered agents in helping to mitigate and prevent the effects of climate change. Thanks very much, and I wish you well in the rest of this webinar.
Thank you so much to Dr. Pillemer for preparing the think piece to accompany our webinar today, and of course the thought-provoking video presentation. So we've now heard 3 slightly different perspectives, but I think a very clear message. Not just that we have to act now, but that clearly there's a role for older persons in climate action. And with that in mind, we can now reflect on how governments and social organizations are acting to combat climate change and how older persons can be engaged at different levels in that action. In a region where population aging is rapid and where a quarter of the total population will be 60 years or over in less than 30 years, this is a critical question. How can we join forces and define strategies to mobilize all parts of society, including older people, to combat the climate crisis? This takes us to our panel discussion. And to answer this question, we have a very, very distinguished group of panelists. Mr. Xiao Chaiwei, who is the Vice President of the China National Committee on Aging, Since 2010, he has been working with the China National Committee on Aging and has been contributing to solving aging issues as a representative of China across Asia and the Pacific. We also have Mr. Mozaharul Alam, my old friend and colleague Babu. He is the regional coordinator of the climate change program at the UN Environment Program, Asia and the Pacific Office. Babu provides really a great political guidance and policy advice and technical inputs to the climate change team of UNEP and can do the same for our discussion today. We also have Professor Jyoti Parikh. She is currently the Executive Director of Integrated Research and Action for Development. She was a member of the Indian Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change and a long-standing champion of climate change science through the IPCC and climate action through the UNFCCC. And last but not least, we have Eduardo Klein, who is the Regional Director of HelpAge International Asia Pacific. Eduardo oversees the work of HelpAge Asia Pacific Regional Office in collaboration with HelpAge network partners throughout the region. So let's jump straight into our conversation, starting with Mr. Xiao from China, where the proportion of older people is growing very rapidly. Mr. Xiao, is there a general awareness of the climate crisis and the need to act fast in China? And how do you perceive that older people can encourage and support the government to live up to the commitments of the Paris Agreement? Over to you, Mr. Xiao.
Thank you, Mr. Kevi Hazadi. I'm very pleased to participate in this webinar as one of the panelists invited by the HelpAge International. Now, in responding to your question, after a fast economic development in the last 4 decades in China, now the whole society of China, from small kids to the older people, has realized the importance of environmental protection. The Chinese government has attached great importance to ecological environmental protection and taken concrete policies and actions to address the climate crisis under the guidance of green development concept. In addition, China vigorously advocates building a community with a shared future for the mankind, actively participates in global environmental governance, earnestly fulfills its obligations under the Convention of Biological Diversity, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the Paris Agreement, and other relevant treaties. China has undertaken international responsibilities commensurate with its development level, achieving relevant goals for addressing climate change in 2020 ahead of schedule. In September this year, our President Xi Jinping made the statement at the 75th UN General Assembly and the UN Biodiversity Summit that China will scale up its nationally determined contributions and adopt more vigorous policies and measures. China aims to peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. In December, at the Climate Ambition Summit, President Xi Jinping further announced that by 2030, China would lower its carbon dioxide emissions per unit of GDP by over 65% from the 2005 year level. China has the largest older population in the world. By the end of last year, China's population over 60 years old reached 250 million. By the year 2050, it is predicted to reach to nearly 500 million, over 30% of China's total population. We see this generation and the future generations of older people are not only living longer, but also better educated. They are healthier than their previous generations, and they are well accepted in family and community. We regard that the older people would be abundant resources to the economy and the society, giving their full play to their advantages. As an important component of China's national strategy of responding to the challenges posed by population aging, China encourages its older citizens to participate in economic and social development and ecological environmental protection. The elderly in China are very active in participating in social welfare programs and are also an important force to protect the ecological environment and coping with climate change. For instance, the elderly people often participate in activities such as planting trees and grass, cleaning up community garbage, and participating in the improvement of village appearance. Older persons also volunteer to conduct environmental inspections as environmental guards. That's my responding to your question, moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Xiao. And I think we're going to dig a little bit deeper on the issue, particularly given the size of population, the potential size of the elderly and older population in China, and the key that they hold really to the change in behavior when it comes to climate. So we will come back to you. Thank you so much for that. Let's move the conversation now to Babu Alam of UNEP. Babu, can you tell us to what extent are citizens and civil society here in our region supporting governments in climate action? So is climate action still very much a government-led initiative, or is it more open to citizens and civil society? And in that context, have you heard of older people being mobilized as a group to push forward on climate action? Babu, over to you.
Thank you, Kaveh, for asking the question. But before I respond that, I would like to also thank the organizer for inviting me in this conversation. But let me unpack that in the context of the international or the global level, and also in the context of the national level. To what extent the civil society organization and the citizens are supporting the government, addressing the impact or the vulnerabilities attached to the aged people. If we look into the engagement of the civil society organization and the citizen at the international level, there are the two ways that we are seeing their participation and engagement. The first area where the civil society organization and the citizens, they're raising the voice. And as we have already heard from one of the speakers, that if we look into the aged people, often we talk about the vulnerabilities. And this is what is happening by the civil society organization and, and raising the voice of the aged people. But if we look into this, the oldest people or the aged people is actually often combined with the other groups, specifically the marginalized group. There's the word they're using, the women group, other type of the youth, the vulnerability. So it is not very specific that the agenda and the voice raised, very specific, focusing on the age, but it's basically combining with other, the vulnerable group, because they see the vulnerability is the unifying the character of the women, the character of the youth and the aged people. So they often pull these things together when they're using the international, the governance system and raising the voices. So this is what we are seeing happening. Organizations like the ActionAid, the Climate Action Network, the Oxfam, who has the regional, the global, as well as the national level presence. So they are the primary drivers seeing raising these voices at the international level. The second area of the civil society organization, what we are seeing at the international level in terms of the decision making under the Framework Convention. And in many countries where the government is actually bringing the civil society organization and the individual citizen to support government to help them in the negotiation, what kind of the issues that they need to actually address as a part of that global the decision-making process. So these are the two areas that where we are seeing the contribution and engagement of the civil society and citizen at the international level. Now, if we move to the national level, the civil society organization is primarily in many countries is working as a supporting arm of the government, addressing the different climate-induced risk. And then if we take the example of the Philippines, the city of Albay, or in Bangladesh, in the coastal area, the civil society organization playing a significant role addressing the disaster-related problem. So they're working, as I said, as a supporting arm of the government. But obviously, we cannot generalize it. It depends on how the government is also actually asking the civil society organization to be part of that, the solution. So this is what we are seeing the happening, the engagement, both at the international level as well as the national level. I think one of the question or the information that I also would like to just add, if we look into that, it's still using the vulnerability of the aged people and solving their problem, but we are not yet seeing them much utilizing the knowledge and the wisdom that they have gained throughout their life as a part of their job, delivering many things, and then using that as a resource. Thank you, Kaveh. Over to you.
Babu, thank you very much, and I think you hit the nail on its head at the end there. That we've begun to understand and unpack very well impacts of climate change on older people, but we haven't even begun to explore the potential impact of mobilizing older people for climate action. And so far, maybe it's been as part of the overall sort of stakeholder groups kind of approach, but with the older populations increasing, will be up to a third of the population of China in the not too distant future. There's clearly a role for a very specific, carving out a very specific role for climate action of the older population. So thank you for that, Babu. Next we have Professor Jyoti. Professor Jyoti, we know that you've been very engaged in the preparations of COP26 that is planned to take place in the UK later this year. In the context of the UNFCCC and in the context of COP26, what work is needed to engage social movements in the preparation and indeed in the actual holding of this event? Do you see any signs in that older people are being drawn into this movement. Over to you, Professor Jyoti.
Thank you very much, Kaveh, and thank you for the organizers, ADB, UNESCAP, and most specifically HelpAge, who have thought of this wonderful idea. We normally think of older people as vulnerable in our climate change discourse, and often we always say it's the poor, women, elderly, slum dwellers, small farmers. They are the vulnerable people. But here, it's also a question of what is the identity. And for example, if it is poor woman who is also senior and who lives in slum, then she has a quadruple whammy, as they call it, a double whammy, triple whammy, and quadruple whammy. But here we would today discuss, and I hope to give in the second part some climate action points on this. So it's also, we should think of everybody having multiple identity. On the other side, you could have very senior people who know, have long experience, they have respect, they have wealth, they have experience, and they can really relate and help others using these attributes that all people have, various identities, and they can use that. So, you asked about COP26. One of the first thing we understood is that this would be a very inclusive conference where they want to engage all stakeholders. COP began as a process of the country level, national level delegates, and they were the ones who are kind of parties. Conference of parties is usually the government people, but certainly UN has left a wide open platform for everybody to set up pavilions and talk about their interests and so on. So I do think that this is idea definitely worth promoting, because imagine a country with 700 million seniors, I mean people not participating in climate action. That would never be the case. So here we have so many seniors, 700, 600 million, 700 million, depends on what the age bar you keep, 60 or 65. Then we have a problem of that. Now they have many roles already, like the caregiving, mentor, and both of these roles, how you can do in small, medium, and large organizations. And now with the digital transformation, digital revolutions, it would be much easier to connect them, and they don't have to leave their homes, but they can still be a force together in the intergenerational transfers of knowledge, experience, and so on. So I would like to give some concrete examples of how very senior people like doctors, lawyers, engineers, government senior people, for one secretary level position, which may be in the government, there would be 5 to 10 retired secretaries who are available as a potential human resource of very high value. So we have these resources, and we need to really tap them, and that would be my in the next intervention. I would give some more details. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jyoti. I mean, this is we look forward to the second iteration with you to get down to specifics of the how these the older people can engage. I think all of our speakers, including yourself, have made it so clear that in a way we're missing a trick if we don't mobilize such a large, influential, important, knowledgeable segment of the population. And we'll definitely come back to you for more details on that. But before, let's finish this first round of conversation with our speakers with Eduardo Klein. Eduardo, it's frequently said that older people are maybe less aware and not as committed as younger generations on acting on climate change or acting on the climate emergency. We don't see it as often crossing our TV screens as we do with the younger people. With the enormous experience you have of working with older people and their organizations in our region, do you see that this generational difference holds true? Is it really true that there is less interest and certainly less engagement? And if that's the case, what are the barriers that you notice in getting this broad engagement of older people on climate action? Over to you, Eduardo.
Thank you so much, Kaveh. In short, the answer, are older people less committed, less engaged? I would say no. There are several misconceptions about the generational divide in relation to climate change. And I am aware that mainly in Western countries that dominate the news sometimes, there is a perception, and sometimes founded perception, that older people are less engaged. They tend to vote for less for those movements that promote climate action. And in some cases, older people are blamed for being the cause of this climate crisis. But this generational divide is frequently mixed with issues of costs of health care or issues of pensions, but does not really relate to attitudes related to climate change. Coincidentally, last week, I don't know if you can see this, the UNDP, maybe you can read this, UNDP and the University of Oxford published a study on, this was called People's Climate Vote, to precisely analyze attitudes in a sample of 50 countries in the world. And there were two key conclusions that I want to highlight. The main social driver for demand of action in the climate emergency is the level of education. It's not the generational divide. There is consistent support from people who, with post-secondary education or higher levels of education, in countries as different as Bhutan or Japan or Ghana or the UK or Germany. They are both at the level of high 70s, 80% of people with post-secondary education supporting action in relation to the climate crisis. So it is not a geographical divide. It is not a generational issue, because although a higher proportion of younger generations believe that climate change is a global emergency, a substantial majority in this study of older people still agreed with them. And this difference can be attributed between 68 and 58%, for example, can be attributed to the levels of education. Younger generations are better educated thanks to the older generation's efforts. So in that sense, the blank statement that older generations are indifferent to climate change does not hold true. And when you ask the barriers for broader engagement of older people, I can respond, which is the main barrier for promoting and supporting the engagement of older people in all spheres of life, including climate action. Ageism, one word, ageism. That means the discriminatory attitudes toward older people. How is this expressed? Thinking that old age is not a process, but is a point of inflection. You are active one day and become a retiree, inactive in economic and social spheres of life the following day, because you turn 60 or you turn 65. That's baloney, that's not so. The WHO very beautifully showed how functionality in life declines very gradually and can be maintained if the social and the economic circumstances are provided for that. So old age is not a destination, it's not a landmark, it's not a point of reference, it's a process. And we saw last week, I think maybe you read the news, and let me almost finalize with this, of the death of Captain Tom Moore in the UK, the famous figure, 100 years old. What a life of that person, what an active, how much difference did he make in just 1 year of time? What an example that person has set of of active aging, despite you're 70, 80, 90 years old. So the other point is, the other barrier is thinking of old age exclusively in terms of vulnerability. This has been pointed before. Sometimes this is done with good intention. We have to support all the vulnerable groups, which we have. Vulnerable groups are this and that, and they include older people as a package. That is wrong. That is well-intentioned ageism. Dumping all older people in the category of vulnerable is utterly wrong. Societies cannot afford to do that, cannot afford to put 1/3 of the population in the category of inactive or vulnerable. So we need to debunk the myth of a straight link between old age and more vulnerable, both at macro level and at community level, household level, local levels, national levels. Thank you, God.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. You know, if you worked with me, we would not permit you to retire. You have far too much drive, too much energy, too much vision. But you speak really the truth. I think that as we sort of wrap up this first round and start looking for the second round, I would like to come back to you on the barriers and to talk a little bit about knowledge, whether knowledge remains a barrier. You know, I look at my own daughter, and she's learning about climate change from the age of 3 years old upwards, right? This was not something that happened to my generation or the generations above. So knowledge may or may not be a barrier, but it'll be interesting for you to get your reflection a little bit on that as we go into the next round. But before then, let me just remind the audience that you can type your questions into the chat box, which will be picked up in the discussions quite soon. Now, before we continue our discussion, we're going to watch 2 videos. The first one is on older people and action to combat climate change, a story from Thar Desert, Rajasthan, India, which was produced by Grameen Vikas Vigyan Samiti, or GRAVIS. And then we will see a video from Bangladesh, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam on older people, climate change, and community action. Before I play these videos, allow me to turn the microphone over and invite Dr. Prakash Tyagi, the Executive Director of GRAVIS, to say a few introductory words. Dr. Prakash, over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be a part of this webinar on this very important theme of climate crisis and intergenerational action. I thank organizers for giving GRAVIS this opportunity to share our experiences. GRAVIS is an NGO which is based in the desert of India. And the desert of India is the largest desert in the world in terms of population density. So it's a significant region with a lot of older people living here with droughts. We have been focusing on climate change adaptation and drought mitigation for a long time. We are also a long-standing member of the Helpage International's global network. Climate change may manifest in many different forms, as we all know, and we are more impacted by droughts, and we strongly believe that droughts get the least attention, and they need more attention when it comes to resource allocation, when it comes to policies related to climate change. At the ground level, we mitigate these drought conditions through various intervention areas, ranging from rainwater harvesting technologies to rejuvenation of community assets, such as pastures, forests, and ponds, from promotion of rain-fed farming methods to training and capacity building of farming communities in rural areas, and then also to mitigate the health impacts of drought conditions, mainly focusing on older people, but also other population groups. While doing all of this, there is a very important cross-cutting element in our work, and that is older people's leadership. We believe that older people are the indispensable knowledge source in the communities. They are the knowledge leaders with traditional wisdom, with the prior experiences of seeing the droughts. And with that, they have been leading our work through a large number of community-based organizations, such as older people associations, and self-help groups. With our drought mitigation activities, we cover about 1.5 million people in rural areas. For today's webinar, we have documented a small video presentation that is going to describe one of the rainwater harvesting technology that we promote in the desert. This technology, in addition of providing year-long water security to rural households, also plays an important role in improving the health status of older people, as well as relieves water fetching drudgery impacting older women in particular. This has been a very low cost, very effective technology that we have been advancing in the Thar Desert, and we hope it can be implemented in other areas as well. Without taking more time, I would invite you to watch the video. And I once again thank you for this opportunity.
The Thar Desert region of Rajasthan in northwest India is the most densely populated desert ecosystem in the world. Climate change in the Thar Desert region has resulted in increased occurrence of droughts and consequent water insecurity. Gravis is determined to address climate change-induced water scarcity through traditional technology of Taka, which is a household-level underground drinking water storage tank that harvests rainwater for drinking and other household use. Bachi Khatu is a 69-year-old woman who lives in Andasar, a scattered village of Jodhpur in Rajasthan. She lives with her husband, son, daughter-in-law and 3 grandchildren. She has 40 sheep and 13 goats to take care of. Their sole source of earning is from the livestock they own. Also, she possesses a small piece of agricultural land. But they do not farm due to the erratic rainfall and frequent droughts. She had to walk 6 kilometers to the neighboring village in the scorching heat with pot over her head to collect water, which often affected her physical health a lot. She recalls that many a times they had to purchase water, but due to unavailability of storage facility, a lot was often being wasted. In the year 2018, Khatu appealed to the VOPA, that is the Village Older People's Association, for the construction of Taka, and it was approved. Now that the Taka is accessible right in front of her house, she does not have to walk long distance to collect water anymore. Rainwater is stored for a period of 3 to 4 months in her Taka. Now, due to availability of water, her family no longer has to compromise on maintaining the sanitation and personal hygiene like before. Khatu now supports her son in taking care of her livestock and is able to utilize her time more productively.
Hi, my name is Quinn from Health Age International. Today, I would like to talk about climate change, older people, and biochar. The 2 most pressing challenges humanity is facing in the 21st century are population aging and climate change. With respect to population aging, in Asia, there are over 600 million people over the age of 60, and by 2050, there will be 1.3 billion. But the nature of aging is changing. Older people are living longer lives, are more educated, healthier, and wealthier than previous generations. In fact, large majority of older people are active, have legitimacies in their homes and communities, and are willing and able to act. With respect to climate change, we are facing a climate change crisis. Our carbon emissions and global temperatures are projected to continue to increase. Our Paris Agreement target to stay below a 2 degrees Celsius rise by 2100 is unlikely to be achieved without more urgent and drastic measures and some form of carbon removal. So how do we connect population aging with action on climate change? To put it simply, what action can we, both young and old, take to reduce and reverse climate change? To help us to decide what action to take and what would be their impact, we have this chart. Not all action have the same or equal impact. This is a chart showing the annual CO2 emission saving by activities. For example, if you change to eat a plant-based diet, you can save this much per year. If you change to eat local food, you can save this much. However, if you decide to be a full-time biochar maker, you can offset this much. Yes, this is a big wow. To help us understand why biochar is so important, we need to go back to the carbon cycle. CO2 is in the atmosphere. Vegetation, when it grows, captures the CO2. But when it rots, eaten, used, or burnt, it releases the CO2 back into the atmosphere, as well as other harmful greenhouse gases and air pollution. This problem with the vegetation in the carbon cycle is its short-term carbon storage capacity. However, if we add biochar to the carbon cycle, this problem will be reduced. Converting vegetation into biochar will release around 20% of the carbon back into the atmosphere, but will store the remaining 80% in the biochar. Biochar can safely store carbon for hundreds of years. Biochar can help remove CO2 from the atmosphere in 3 ways. First, converting biomass to biochar can store 80% of the carbon in the biochar permanently. Second, using biochar as soil enhancer can improve the soil health, which will capture and store more carbon. Do you know more carbon is stored in the soil than all the carbon in the vegetation and atmosphere combined? Third and lastly, using biochar can also greatly increase plant growth, which will capture and store even more CO2. There are many ways to make biochar. However, the one that we are promoting are by far the fastest and the easiest method to learn, set up, and do. It requires the lowest investment, does not require expensive infrastructure like roads, electricity, building, or running water. Our biochar kit is very mobile. You can easily carry it to where it is needed. It is flexible and easy to scale up. You can start from small household scale, costing less than a few dollars, and up to large industrial size, costing millions. It's designed for poor household and community. Besides removing CO2 and reducing air pollution, biochar can also bring many other benefits, such as improving food and income security, converting degraded land into productive land, and create employment for a large number of people to grow, gather the biomass, and make biochar and biochar products. The most common question we receive relating to our biochar scheme are, will it cause deforestation? Is there enough biomass waste? Our response are, you do not need to cut down trees to make biochar. Actually, the best material to make biochar comes from farm and household waste. This is a $1,000 biochar production setup. It can make 2 to 3 tons of biochar per day. Do you know making 1 ton of biochar is equal to removing 3 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere, which is not bad for just $1,000 investment. Therefore, among the few carbon negative options, biochar is the only one that allows anyone from anywhere to do. This is a flowchart of our vegetation and biochar schemes. First, we grow our crop. We harvest and gather our food and what we need. We then take the remaining biomass waste and convert it to biochar in just 1 to 2 hours. Biochar is then used to make soil enhancer and other health and environmentally friendly products. Using biochar will improve the soil and increase crop production. With each cycle, we will have more food, use less water and fertilizer, have healthier soil, and have less and less CO2 and air pollution in the atmosphere. This is a big win for humanity and for the planet. There are 570 million farms in the world, of which 97% are small farms, and a large percent are run by older farmers. If just 1% of the farm become biochar maker, they can reasonably remove 5 gigatons of CO2 per year at a cost of only $20 per ton, which is by far the lowest cost option to remove CO2. Now, I would like to share with you what we are doing to support older people and their older people association in 5 countries, namely India, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam on biochar awareness, production, and usage.
ภาวะของโลกปัจจุบันที่ร้อนขึ้นเกิดจากการปล่อยคาร์บอนของมนุษย์เพราะว่าถ่านไบโอชาร์จะเป็นตัวที่จะช่วยดูดซับคาร์บอนในอากาศ
বায়োসার পরিবেশ এবং জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের জন্য খুবই ভালো এটা আমার মতন নারীর জন্য খুব উপকারী আমি রান্নার কাজে বায়োসার ব্যবহার করি কারণ ওজে জ্বলে বেশি তাপ ধোয়া ছাড়া রান্না করা যায় এটা আমার সময় ও খরচ বাঁচায় রান্নার সময় স্বাস্থ্য সুরক্ষা করে
Làm than sinh học rất dễ và nhanh, không tốn nhiều kinh phí. Than sinh học có lợi cho môi trường, vật nuôi và cải thiện đất bằng màu. Tôi mong rằng tổ chức 2, người cao tuổi các cấp, chính quyền các cấp nhân rộng mô hình này trên toàn quốc.
Yes, our world is facing population aging and climate change challenges at the same time. However, if older people and their older people associations are included and invested, they can be a big part of the solution to our population aging and climate change challenges.
Thank you so much both to Dr. Tyagi and Gravis and Mr. Quyen Tran for the videos that really bring together the 2 issues of aging and climate change. They're adding much more, I think, for us to think about and discuss in the second round with our esteemed panelists. So let's jump straight into that second round, starting again with you, Mr. Xiao. Talking very much in concrete terms, we'd really like to hear from you, what are older people and their organizations in China doing now or can do in the future in very practical terms to engage in climate action and environment protection? We've got a lot of questions in for you that are more or less along those same lines. You know, people would like to know examples of specific climate action by older people. And there's even questions of whether the government provides benefits to older people who volunteer to undertake climate action. So a lot of interest, a lot of questions. Mr. Xiao on China, over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Since the 1980s, sorry, I opened the camera. No, it's okay. Thank you, Kevin. In responding to your question, the older persons associations are very important resources in China. Since the 1980s of the last century, China has supported and encouraged the development of the older persons associations we commonly refer as OPAs. According to the data in 2015, 5 years ago, there are more than 550,000 OPAs in the urban and rural communities across China. With the strong social mobilization capabilities among the elderly, the OPAs organize the elderly people to actively participate in the work of protecting the ecological environment. In the remote rural areas, the OPAs take the lead in promoting the use of marsh gas, using human and animal manure, straw, sewage, etc. for biological fermentation. to develop clean energy for daily use. In harvest seasons, the OPAs organize the elderly people for field patrols to stop the random burning of crop stocks and effectively protect the blue sky and pure land in the countryside. In urban communities, the OPAs encourage the senior citizens to serve as household waste sorting supervisors. They work in small groups or in pairs to patiently discourage the residents' behavior of mixing rubbish and instruct the residents to sort and dispose of household waste besides standing beside the garbage collecting points so as to maintain a beautiful environment of their communities. The China National Committee on Aging, from we are working in, and the other aging-related departments will further take effective measures to encourage and mobilize the hundreds of millions of elderly people to continuously raise the awareness of environmental protection. Thank you, Kevin.
Very good. Thank you so much. There was one question really about the, I guess it's about incentives. You know, does the government provide benefits to older people for volunteering? Are there examples of that?
Question for me?
Yes, Mr. Shah. Let's continue the conversation.
Yes, we encourage the older people association to organize the older people to protect the environment and other voluntary works. For instance, we show what they have done to the public, to publicize their work and set the examples of these volunteers. We have many kind of actions to encourage this voluntary work.
Thank you very much. I guess the incentive is the result, is the action in itself. Thank you so much for those answers. Let's move next to Babu. Babu, I was going to ask you, you know, how you can think, how can UNEP promote further engagement of older people in protecting the environment? Which that's one question that we have. We also had coming in, and I was hoping you could try to answer, what is the UN doing to confront ageism and removing what Eduardo called the main barrier, essentially, to older people's climate action? I wonder if you can tackle both of those questions for us. Babu.
Okay, let me start with the first one, Kaveh, in terms of promoting the further engagement of older people in protecting environment. When I was looking into the UNEP, the portfolio and the area of the work, and what I was thinking, engaging the older people in three main areas. And then one of the area that, you know, that we have the environmental education program. We work with the different universities. And I think that would be one of the area where we can see what type of the new information and the knowledge that elder or older people is necessary to take actions. So that is the one area, and as our panel member from China mentioned about the different, the old age, the people, the group, and then how to actually provide them the additional or the knowledge and information, and then empowering them to take action. The second area, normally UNEP is producing almost now in the last 1 decade, is the emission gap report and the adaptation gap report, where we present the problem as well as the solution. And I think one of the things that we can move further when we are talking about the solution, how this group can actually take some of the action as an individual or as a group to advance those actions. So I think that is in a second area that I see the possibility for UNEP to engage them. The third area, when we are supporting the government, either formulating the national adaptation plan, formulating the national, the determined contribution, or piloting some of our activities, the innovative idea that we tested as a pilot scale, and how to bring the older people to help and implement those kind of the activities. So I think those three areas for the UNEP where UNEP can consider to engage them, not only supporting us, but also supporting them to take action. Now on the last one, I think the part of the elements that I have mentioned is also applicable for the last part of the question that came probably through this, the question and answer, the channel. But if I may ask, I think I have also seen one of the question about the problem for the old people, the heat wave and the cold wave, and what are the other the problem. One of the things that I'd like to mention about the slow onset, the problem that coming from climate change is the sea level rise, the salinity intrusion, which will enter into the water resources, the drinking water. And I think that is another area that also need to consider as a part of the problem, but also need solution. The gradual, the change phenomena, not always thinking about the extreme.
Thank you very much. I noticed that you dodged the UN question. That's okay. We will carry it forward. Dr. Jyoti, allow me to come to you. The question that we had for you was obviously, you've been engaged in climate action from so many different angles, but we wanted to ask you about whether and how gender comes into the mix. And at the same time, in our questions, in our chat box, we had a request for maybe some examples of older women involved in climate action, how and to provide us with just a few examples of how it's done, including potentially through the climate negotiation process. But really, how have older women in particular become involved in climate action at the national level, or potentially even through international processes like the climate UNFCCC process? Over to you, Dr. Jyoti. You're on mute still. Dr. Jyoti, you're on mute.
So I will end with your answer to your question. So let me begin first by saying from bottom up how how the senior citizens can engage through small, medium, and large organizations. And as I mentioned before, there are various types of professional hats people wear, and they are very resourceful themselves. So we start with the resourceful people, and then I would not by any means implying that the others are not. But let's say there are government officials who have retired. They can link. There are so many government schemes which are actually meant for older people, and especially at the time of we are trying also look at what kind of alerts for disaster management, for heat stress, and so on. So and the help type of in the government's initiatives, but older people are not able to do that. So government people can do that capacity building a lot, either in the households, neighborhoods, ward level, and city level, and state level if they are very influential, and so on. So this is the the linking with the available schemes. The second alternative may be also for the professionals like doctors. They can promote the knowledge of how to deal with heat stress, with vector-borne diseases, and so on. So that is one way. Whereas engineers and businessmen can help making renewable energy and energy efficiency, waste management type of suggestions through these small, medium, and large organizations, as I mentioned. And so we need to make many, now internet makes it very easy to make web groups. We are all members of many groups, whether it is from our schools or whether it is neighbors, whether it is our professions and so on. So that can be really harnessed. So I would, the other issue is the digital knowledge. Now, many older people may not have digital knowledge as some of these professionals, and they can do hand holding. And all these require some organization, some finance, some capacity building, or some meager resources also. And all these need to be thought and activated through some, but they can do some of that through their own initiatives also. So now I come to also I mentioned the entrepreneurship and renewable energy, that the small businesses can be set up and so on. Now, digital banking, work from home, education from home, all these are thought of, but sometimes older people don't get benefits out of this. So that's one issue that one needs to look at. In terms of the women, I would say that we always think of them as caregivers, and certainly professional women can do as the others do, but these, you say poor, I mentioned poor woman who is a slum dweller and who is a senior citizen. Is she a burden to the society? No, she is already taking, and we have plenty of data to show that in the time of disasters and certain calamities, they have taken care of grandchildren and other, they have been contact point with the parents and the grandchildren, and given comfort to them and even saved lives. So, so we can empower them by making a group of them. So if there are, groups who are trained in even a slum situation, that something like this happens, you people have to do this. And so caregiving is also, people now talk about giving money for the caregiving role of women. So it is a very, they have reduced many hardships on both parents and grandchildren, and we're talking about intergenerational help. So, and the middle generation can benefit from mentoring by either mentoring by the senior citizens or supporting them if they are not that capable. So even women are supporting those who are very active out there in the field, giving them, solace and comfort level that their houses, their children, and everything is safe. Also, they have a very strong cultural, they transfer cultures, and they have lived with resource scarcity in their past lives. All of us have. The type of things one sees here now is very different from what was there some few decades ago. So people, that knowledge is also very useful in the times of climate change. So, but then what do IPCC and all these UN initiatives, since I was involved in that also, I feel that when I was trying to make this type of writing some paper, I felt there is hardly any material available in the research arena, and IPCC solely depends on research and only research sources. So one needs to support that so that the policies can be evidence-based. And unless there are evidences to show certain things, many times policies don't get taken or implemented. So we need to activate that, documenting and also creating such groups and highlight the success stories so that others can see it's how sometimes it can be fairly easy to do these things. So and it would require, I would say, research, capacity building, technical assistance, and finance, of course. So and that one has to figure out within the country and within the internationally. And of course, capacity building is one of the main things that needs to be. And it has to be also, all generations have to come together to fight climate change, and we cannot have slots of here you sit, you older people, you sit here, you children, and here I do all these things myself. That's not the way we'll be able to solve climate change problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jyoti. Thank you. Eduardo, I'm coming to you, and I realize that we are out of time, so I hope that the panelists and our audience will give us 5 or 6 extra minutes just to be able to pull the strands together. And really, the question to you, which came through the Q&A, Eduardo, is about the policies that are needed to overcome the barriers, right? Okay, we recognize the barriers may be there, some overt, some less so. So what are the policies needed to overcome those barriers and to engage older persons in climate action? It's a huge question, which would probably take you an hour to answer comprehensively. I'm wondering if we can narrow it down and to think, what can we do collectively coming out of this webinar, right, to begin to address some of those barriers? Babu already mentioned how he is going to do it through 3 very clearly established processes that he is engaged in vis-a-vis climate action. But what should we collectively do? What are sort of the policies that we together can take to overcome some of those barriers? Eduardo, over to you. You're on mute. You're on mute, Eduardo.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies for that. There are multiple policies. As climate change does not belong to one sector, one ministry, one area of work. It encompasses all areas of work in organizational terms, in government terms, involves ministries of health, finance, education, etc. I would highlight a point that you mentioned before, Kaveh, which is conveying knowledge, but targeting that knowledge to older people. And how do you convey knowledge to older people? Basically through their organizations. And there are multiple types of organizations. We have seen the Older People Association. There are over 500, over 500,000 of them in China. If all those, plus the 40,000 in Thailand, plus the 60,000 in Vietnam, plus the multiple other type of organizations in China or in Ghana or in different parts of the world, if they all have climate change and climate change action within their messages, that is important. So for that, they need knowledge. You mentioned that your daughters knew from the age of 4 or 5, they were aware of climate change. While we spoke, I got this, I don't know if you see this photo from my granddaughters. They are looking at this webinar and they are in the other side of the world and they know much more about climate change than I knew 10 years ago. So they will grow with that awareness and they will reach old age being totally committed to action in climate change. I'm sure of that. And that they will also think, you older generations, you did well, because the older generations are the ones that founded the Green Movement in the 80s. Those who started working as young activists are the ones who are old now. So older people are active. We need to expand that based on knowledge. So policies have to facilitate the organization of older people, because older people, when they are organized, they can have leadership. They can convey knowledge not only to themselves, but to their communities, but to others. They can magnify the voice and the experience of older people, so organizations can promote and organize action. So in that sense, I would say, let us promote investment in organizing, promoting the organization of older people at all levels, not only OPAs, retirees, cultural clubs, older women associations. There are many, many ways in which this can lead to action. So having said all that, I think at the moment we need to think of very specific policies in the ministries of education, older education, lifelong education, for example, is another factor. We are talking only about the 600 million people who are over the age of 60 in Asia. But if we consider the ones who are reaching old age in the next 10 years, we have nearly 1 billion people, those who are 50 years and older. So we need to promote long life education, and part of the awareness curriculum understanding of climate change is important. And I'm sure that will come up also in the actions of COP26. And I'm sure that Ms. Espinosa, who made this brilliant statement at the beginning, will also be promoting the inclusion of older people in all those international processes. So we take from international to national to Mr. Xiao in the China National Committee of Aging, the provincial committees of aging, and all the OPAs throughout the world. Okay, I think we're running out of time, Cabe. Sorry, I get a bit passionate with these issues.
No, Eduardo, so I'm due to hand back to you momentarily, and there's no way I can summarize what was said, but I think, awareness is an important first step. And to be honest, I think you have opened our eyes to maybe something that we've been overlooking, an incredible resource that somehow we've been overlooking when it comes to climate action and when it comes to building the momentum for climate action. And that is the role that older persons can play. I mean, we didn't really get into it, but can you imagine the spending power of 1 billion people that we will soon have, or the spending power of the 500 million that Mr. Xiao referred to in China, to drive the economy in a certain way and to deal with that and make sure that the businesses are also in tune with our climate aspirations. So Eduardo, all that remains to me as your moderator is really just to thank all of the panelists, the people who put the videos together. Thank you for all of the people who joined and asked questions. We tried to answer many of them. We will answer more of them after this session. And of course, many thanks to you and your team, Eduardo, for bringing us together. And with that, let me hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Kade. Just a few points. This session is being recorded, so the recorded video will be shared with many of those who could not join now, and with all of you, of course. We'll also share a policy brief that will come as an outcome of this session. And I want to thank you, Kade, in particular, for your fantastic moderation as usual. And thank also Ms. Patricia Espinosa. She's very engaged, very busy preparing the COP26 follow-up of the Madrid, of the Paris Agreement, and she found time to make this statement. I want to highlight the support of the Asian Development Bank through the PA 911, which is a fund financed by the Japan Fund for Poverty Reduction and the Republic of Korea Asia and Knowledge Partnership Fund. I think their support has been crucial. We are going to send an evaluation of the event to all those who joined this event. Please fill it, complete the evaluation, because that helps us improve for the next event. And lastly, I want to announce that on 9 March, we have the last of this series of webinars and this will be focused on building back better and population aging. What does building back better really mean? Are we back to where we were? Are there indications of a global reset, as the World Economic Forum says, or is it just sweet talk? We'll have a group of very polemic and clear panelists. We are not afraid of calling bread bread and wine wine. That's a Spanish saying that means we need to have this type of discussions. And thank you all for your participation, your questions. Thank you, Mr. Xiao Chaiwei in China. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you, Prakash. Thank you, Babu. And thank you, Dr. Jyoti. I don't see you there. And thank you all the backup team that helped us prepare this. And Kave, thank you very much. Good night to those of you in the Pacific. Good morning to those of you in Europe. And good day to the rest of us. Thank you.